Hello fam, welcome to another episode of me getting this new office theater built. I would love to start by getting some speakers mounted, specifically the height speakers, because I honestly don't need to mount the ear level speakers because they're all on speaker stands. So I want to take care of the height speakers first because since they are high up, they are mounted, they will require me to get stuff out of the way in order to get up there and drill holes, put the mounts up there, etc. So might as well get that out of the way first, so that way I don't have to kind of skirt around everything else if I happen to have everything else set up. That's doing it backwards, folks. So let's try and avoid that. Okay, so I got this handy dandy step stool, or you can use a ladder, whatever you see fit. All right, so then I can get into this corner here. That sure sounds like a solid stud right there. One thing I did in the previous theater was that my heights in particular, oh, did you not follow me? There we go. It stopped following my face. All right, so one thing about the previous theater on my brother-in-law's property, all of my height channels were on fixed flat surfaces. So the front heights were flush against the wall, just pointing down because they were angled speakers, but they were basically shooting audio down, basically to the side of my listening position, which is typically great for, you know, a couch because you've got multiple seats there, multiple listening positions. But since this is technically going to be my testing theater once again, and there's only one chair, this time I'm going to have some wall mounts that are articulating and not just flush against the wall and that's it. So that way I can aim them towards the listening position. I also wanted to get some articulating wall mounts because of this stupid window right here, because obviously I can't mount anything up top because there's a window there. So, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but here's the chair, and my head will be resting just in front of this window here. So that way I can mount it on a stud, the stud that's just on the side of the window itself, the supporting beam there. So that way it doesn't have to be exact. I can put it in the stud, and then the articulating feature of those wall mounts, I'll then be able to mount it and just kind of have it sticking out a little bit and then pointing down at my listening position. So that way I can just have a little bit more accuracy when it comes to the height channels pointing at me. Make sure the tweeters are aimed pretty much right at my head, because I just didn't have that precision last time. Because honestly, with post-production facilities, that's what they end up doing anyway. They only have one main listening position at their console, and all the height channels are angled directly at them. So in this office, I hope to have just a really dialed in and immersive height channel experience. Again, something in the future that I will let you know if it really does make a difference or not. So another thing I'm excited about to test out. But yeah, Aperion Audio, once again, was able to hook me up. I already had one pair of articulating wall mounts, but they sent me out 2 more pairs so that I could have all 6 of my height channels with these nice articulating wall mounts. The center height obviously doesn't really need an articulating wall mount because it's in the center and it'll be pointing pretty much straight down at me. Same thing with the Voice of God. I just need a regular flush mount for that because it's just going to be straight above me. But let me just show you a little bit closer. This is the articulating wall mount. So this side is the side that goes into the wall, and then I can loosen this here to have it go left or right, and then loosen this to have it go up and down as well. So yeah, that's what articulating means. I can do all kinds of things and it's not just flush and that's it. So yeah, I hope to have that dialed in precisely. All right, so I'm gonna try and find out where the studs are. And the goal is, just because this isn't a very wide space, it's just beyond 9 feet, 9 feet, 3 inches, 4 inches, something like that. So I pretty much want the height channels to be in the corners, especially because I'm going to have a center height. So I want to have as much space between the left, center, and right height channels. So I'm going to try my best to mount them to the stud and maneuver the articulating feature in such a way where I can have them as close to the corner as possible, pointing diagonally at my listening position. That's the goal, but as we all know, any DIY construction project, just know that you're going to run into some issues at some point. It's just how it is. It's Murphy's Law. Anything that could happen just might happen. Okay, before I start drilling holes, I'm gonna put the speaker itself onto this articulating wall mount and just kind of hold it up there, because I just want to see where exactly I need to drill the holes without it being too high or too low, just to make sure that I have the correct position so that I don't end up like being too close to the ceiling and then the speaker doesn't even fit, you know? So yeah, I'm gonna put the mount on the speaker itself, hold it up there, just get a ballpark place where I need to drill the holes, and then I'll drill the holes. So yeah, this little piece goes on the speaker itself, and then it goes onto this right here, and then you do an additional screw here to lock it in even tighter. So mount that onto the speaker first, okay, and then yeah, it slides in like that. Pretty cool. Yeah, just like that. Ooh, that's why you definitely want to get it in a stud though. I mean, they're not like super heavy, but man, they're heavy enough. So if I want it to be pretty much right towards the top, I'm gonna need the mount to be roughly there. I know you can't actually see behind here, but that's not the point. Yeah, roughly right about there. I'm just making little marks on the top and the bottom of this thing here. Okay, so that's roughly where it needs to be. Hopefully there's a stud there. I believe there is though, because it is the corner of the room. Normally corners have studs. Okay, this sounds like a stud right here, and it's usually 16 inches to the center of each stud. So the fact that there's a stud here, that's not exactly 16 inches, because honestly, with this office space, they definitely put an additional wall here after the fact, after they got this main supporting wall put in. So since it sounds like the stud is about here, which seems like it's about 8 to 10 inches over from the wall, and the size of the speaker itself is going to be a factor, so probably going to be pretty close, maybe the closest I'll be able to get without getting like, you know, directly in the very, very corner. Actually, that very corner should be a stud. I mean, if they did it right. So I might be able to get in the very, very corner in order to get the pen through these holes so I can mark where the drilling will be. I need to loosen this a little bit. And these mounts do come with this hex wrench, so you don't have to worry about that. So now I should be able to more easily put the pen through to get those holes marked. So yeah, I am actually going to try and mount it on the side wall, the very, very corner of this side wall, and then articulate it in such a way where it is pointing diagonally. That looks straight up and down. Fill in these holes a little more. Okay. And if you're following along at home, this is the screw that comes with the mounting kit, and this is a 1/8 inch drill bit. I mean, to be honest, the 3/16 drill bit is pretty much exactly the same diameter as this screw, but you normally want to have a drill bit that is just a little smaller than the screw itself, so that way it catches on the wood of the stud. You don't want to make your drill holes too big. That defeats the whole purpose. So yeah, 1/8 inch drill bit. And now the fun part, drilling holes, yay. That is definitely a stud. Hooray! Okay, now I'm talking with screws in my mouth. Let's get it in a little bit. The other one in. Boo. Not as magnetic as I thought. Don't you just love that when a screw falls down and it disappears into a black void? There we go. Okay. I like to get it mostly in with an electric drill and then do the last bit by hand, just so I don't accidentally strip the screw head. I also like to do it that way in particular because the drill that I have is pretty old, so it's not like an impact driver. I just did something stupid, but I'm gonna keep it in so you don't do the same thing I did. And a lot of you may have already seen this coming, but now that I have it up there and that the speaker itself slides from top to bottom when you get it on the mount. So in its current position, obviously I can't, oh, maybe I can. Oh, that's right, I got a drop ceiling. Maybe it'll work. Haha, hooray for drop ceilings. Nice. Ho 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 ho! That is pretty much just like an inch. Well, the front is like an inch below the drop ceiling. Oh, but the rear, yeah, there we go. Yeah, and the rear is like a centimeter, maybe not even that, away from the ceiling. Okay, whew. That is pretty much in the corner of the corner. Man, I'm real happy about that. Okay, so now I know that it fits. Now I know that it can go there. That's great. But in its current position, now that I have the articulation to where it should be, so we still haven't tightened anything yet. We're keeping the side-to-side articulation loose. The up and down articulation is still tight, so that way it doesn't like possibly drop the speaker itself. But I want to make sure the side-to-side articulation is pointing to the listening position as it should. And you'll notice for this step, even though they do have these magnetic grills that go on the speaker itself, which I will put on once we have it all arranged properly, but I'm leaving it off so I can see the tweeter, make sure it's pointing at me while I sit down in the main listening position. Okay, so I'm here. Now that I'm sitting in the listening position, that tweeter is pointed way far to the left. I mean, it's almost pointing at the left surround instead of pointing like at my right ear, because this is the right front. So in this case, I may not want the mount on the side wall like it is currently. I probably want it on the front wall because yeah, that's pointed at too much of an angle. Pretty much just gonna miss me. I don't want the height information to cross. I want it basically pointing at the sides of my head. Back to the drawing board. Okay, let's try this again. Once again, thank you for being a drop ceiling. So I can just do this. Okay, left and right swivel, I still have loose. It's not as far into the corner as I had hoped, but just something I'll have to deal with. It's okay. But honestly, maybe that's a good thing because now it's probably going to be more in line with the right front speaker anyway. That's probably good. That's pretty darn good. Maybe a tiny bit inward. That maybe. Let's check that. Yeah, I think that's a little too much. Now it's kind of pointing at my eye instead of my ear. So maybe it was fine just where I had it. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so that's good for the side-to-side swivel. So I will remove it just so I have a little bit easier time to tighten the side-to-side swivel because you got to use the hex wrench. There we go. Let's loosen the up and down swivel. Let's see if that's good. No, that's kind of pointing at my shoulder. And tighten that up a little more. Yeah, I think that's good. And tightening and loosening. Back and forth and back and forth. Whew. Hopefully that does it. Like that tweeter is looking right at my ear. Hooray! Finally. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Like I said, it's going to be more in line with the right front speaker that is gonna go roughly pretty much right below it anyway. So maybe that's gonna be better in the end. I'm gonna leave the drop ceiling tile kind of all funky like that just for a minute because I also want to get the speaker wire in place. And just to make it easier on myself, I'm gonna take the speaker off once again, get the speaker wire on there, and just kind of loosely have it hang, at least at the beginning. And then once I get all the other speakers mounted and in place, know where they are, know how long the speaker wire runs need to be, then I will try and, put the speaker wire coming down the very corner of the room just to make it look nicer. I might put a cable channel in the corner just to kind of hide it a little bit better. I don't know, we'll see. I might not go too crazy. Okay, having kept all of that speaker wire that I had in my old theater, I just pulled it out because, you know, speaker wire is not cheap. This run of speaker wire that I have currently in my hand looks roughly the right length. Go somewhere like that, and then it'll go to whichever amp. Yeah, it looks pretty much spot on as far as the length. Okay, there we are. One height speaker. Hooray. All right, let's do the rest. I may save the voice of God for another day. I'll definitely have it in this video, but just because I'm dealing with the drop ceiling, I don't know. I may have to do some special things for that particular one. So yeah, let's get the rest of the 5 speakers up later on in the video, because I have yet to receive 2 more height speakers that are on their way. So once I get those will be the center height and the voice of God. Or maybe I end up doing them now, because I know the rear heights will probably be pretty easy because there's not a lot of stuff in the way. Those might be the ones that I mount once I finally get the final 2 height speakers delivered. So we'll see. I don't know. Okay, before I move on, one thing I wanted to show you is that the center height, okay, so this stud right here that you can see, so this is half of the flush stealth mount that Aperion Audio sells. It's not the articulating kind, but since we got one stud that is kind of slightly off center to the right, I want to make sure that they are supported as best they can. 2 on one side on the stud, and then this middle one here, I'm gonna do with a drywall screw. So that way it at least has some stability on the left side. But obviously I'm gonna get better stability inside of a stud. I guess I could do 2 because I do have some extras. It's probably gonna be fine since I have 2 in the stud over here. So just wanna let you know that that's what I'm gonna be doing, so I get the best possible scenario out of something that is slightly off center. Okay, so just so you know, running into a little bit of a snag concerning the voice of God. And honestly, it's a drop-down ceiling. The speaker itself is 11 pounds. So I'm not exactly sure if I'm actually going to go through with getting that voice of God directly above. Because nowadays, actually, Marantz and Denon do say that you can still get the voice of God channel if you have 2 middle heights, because it'll play the voice of God information out of the 2 middle heights simultaneously, which gives a phantom voice of God image. Ideally, I would like to have an actual voice of God straight above me, just so I know I'm getting direct sound and not a phantom image. Because I know it's fine if you install in-ceiling speakers, like the circular ones that go against the ceiling tile itself and clamp onto the ceiling tile. But mounting a speaker with a particular speaker mount, that's different. So it's still up in the air. But this particular tile that is straight above the listening position, I was trying to push it up to see just if I could, in fact, mount something to it, or if anything was there that shouldn't be. And sure enough, when I pushed up against it, it was really heavy. Drop ceiling tiles are very light. So I backed up to the one behind it, also very heavy. So I backed up 2 ceiling tiles. I was able to push that up and out so I could actually see. And there was like this fluorescent light just there, just sitting. Because I believe the previous tenant in this office installed these lights because they were dimmer. The fluorescent lights were just really harsh white light, very bright. I think this person installed these lights in its place, but apparently they just left the fluorescent lights up there above the ceiling. So I'm just gonna have to check it out. Again, You never know what's going to happen, especially if you're moving into a place that has been occupied by somebody else previous to you. Of course, I was going to run into a couple of snags. It's inevitable, just like I said. Now I'm going to see if I can move some other ceiling tiles and see if I can somehow maneuver that fluorescent light out of the way so that I can get a better idea of if I'm even going to be able to pull off having a Voice of God speaker up there. Let's hope. All right, for those of you interested, the speaker wire that I've been fishing around and making sure is long enough to reach to all the various speaker locations. I'm not using anything too special. It's just 14 gauge speaker wire I got off of Amazon. I can't remember the brand of it. Yeah, nothing too special except for the fact that it is copper, whatever, 99.9% oxygen-free copper or whatever they call it. Because sometimes you'll see speaker wire that has aluminum inside, and it is a lot cheaper, but that's because it's not just less expensive, but it is also cheaper quality. So if you can, I would recommend getting copper wire. Even though it is more expensive, it is more durable, it's just better. So yeah, 14 gauge copper wire. And this is for all the speakers that are exposed that I can get to that don't have to go in a wall or above this drop ceiling whatsoever. Just because I am having everything go along the ground and then up, as you can see from this. So I'm having everything go along the ground and then up, and then I'll eventually clean it all up and make it look nicer and more uniform and maybe a little bit more hidden behind some tracks if I think it's necessary, but I don't know. Since this is a testing theater, it doesn't have to look absolutely pretty. If this were my house, that would be a different story. But the Voice of God speaker that is going to go above, instead of just having it go along the wall and the ceiling, I'm probably going to have it go along the wall and then up into the tiles and then up above the tiles and then coming over and then down to where the eventual Voice of God speaker will be. So in that case, I'm using this, which is CL2 fire rated speaker cable that can go in wall and in ceiling because it's got this, heavy duty sheath surrounding it, unlike this speaker wire. So yeah, still 14 gauge, still copper, but it's CL2 rated with this shielding around it. So it doesn't catch on fire. But yeah, that's literally the only one that I'm going to be doing with this more expensive speaker wire, because since it is CL2 rated, it is more expensive, but everything else is going to be exposed along the floor and along the ceiling. Also, as I said previously, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a Voice of God at all, but I think I am going to. But here's the kicker. This ceiling tile that's right above the listening position, I'm just going to take it out, which is super easy. You just lift it and then just kind of twist it and pull it out. After I take it down, I'm going to measure it, get the dimensions, and then I'm going to cut a piece of plywood, probably at least an inch, probably 2 inches, just to be that much more durable. So I'm going to cut that plywood to size, and then I'm going to mount the speaker to it as it's down and easier to work with. Then I'm going to put the piece of plywood and speaker back into place. And typically with the mounts that I have, it would be 2 screws per mount, but just because I want to make sure it is so secure, because it's right above my head, I do not want that thing eventually accidentally falling on me. I'm going to use 4 screws because I do in fact have extra, because the thing about the Theatrus speakers from Aperion Audio, because every single one comes with a stealth wall mount. So there's a bunch of stealth wall mounts that I'm not using because these are going to be going on speaker stands. But I do appreciate how Aperion Audio gives you that option. If you wanted to mount the Theatrus speakers, don't have to get those separate. It's just part of the speaker and part of the cost already. So that's cool. So yeah, I have a bunch of extra, so I'm going to use 2 extra screws to get the 4 corners of the mount plate that goes directly onto the piece of plywood So yeah, those are the plans. Hope it works out. All right, one thing I want to show you is that once again, another roadblock in the way. This one's pretty minor, but it's still pretty annoying. Just the fact that I have to deal with it, just something else that has come up. It seems like every place along this wall and the wall that the TV is on, about 2 feet away from the wall itself, the carpet starts to rise a little bit, just a slight incline. Here, I'll switch it around so you can see it better. So this is one of my speaker stands, and the foot of the speaker stand is right up against the wall. But as you can see, zoom in here a little bit, zoom in even more. No, that's it. That is not centered. That is not level. So in order to be level, I've got to raise the front up maybe about 1 inch to get it level. So yeah, pretty annoying to say the least, but I think I'm just going to use this excess foam that I have just so it's something that can help with the acoustics and it's not something hard that would reflect any audio. So I think I'm going to take maybe 1 or 2 sheets and put it under all the various speaker stands that are going to go against that wall. Plus this acoustic treatment that I made also suffers from kind of leaning forward. In fact, this one in particular, you can see they're all leaning against the wall because right now if I had them upright, they would just fall over. So, man, just another thing to worry about. But again, this is fairly minor. It's just an inconvenience, really. So, just thought I'd clue you in on that because it's just another little roadblock. Not everything is perfect. So, we just got to get over those humps and find creative ways to deal with it. The end. Okay, so here's the finished result. Got some acoustic foam underneath the fronts, but not in the back, so that way you can be tilted up a little bit. But now it's level. Hooray. And same thing with the speaker stand and everything along the way, including the TV stand. TV stand has a little bit up front as well because it was leaning just ever so slightly down. Not too bad though, compared to the stuff on this wall. Didn't take too long to fix it, but still just annoying that I had to deal with it at all. Okay, so I have taken this piece of wood. It's plywood, but it's actually really nice plywood. I got this at my brother-in-law's house. I used his table saw to cut it to size. One of these tiles is 4 feet by 2 feet. Well, honestly, just a hair under on each side. It's technically 47 3/4 inch and 23 3/4 inch. But yeah, hopefully this is the right size. I measured twice. Hopefully it actually turned out. But just so you know, I'm going to not only drill some holes for the speaker itself, but I'm going to drill a hole beside it or possibly behind it. Just a small hole, maybe just like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch in diameter. So that way I can snake the speaker wire through it and then connect it to the speaker. Fingers crossed it all works. That's the plan. Okay, step 1, it fits. It's pretty snug. I think I measured it pretty spot on. Although I did have to kind of slide the tile next to it, or at least make enough space for my hand to go through so I could push the plywood down. But yeah, it's snug, it's in there. So took it out and now I'm gonna drill some holes in it. Yeah! All right, so just to let you know about what's happening next, these speaker wires are from my previous build, and I just don't want to have them go to waste. They're really nice. They're pretty expensive because they're the CL2 rated in-wall, in-ceiling speaker wire. Each one is just about like 5 feet in length. I've got several of these cuts because in my previous theater, all the speaker wire behind the walls and the ceiling went down and they all joined at a big old wall plate. So then I took these, plugged them into the wall plate, and then they plugged into the amps. So these lengths didn't need to be that long anyway. So, I mean, 5 feet, that's actually probably a little excessive anyway, just going from the wall to the amp. But it's always better to have more than not enough, right? So just so they don't go to waste, I just popped over to Home Depot and I got some electrical tape. So I'm just going to splice. So there's one currently connected to the Voice of God speaker already. That's the one that's going through the little hole that I drilled into the plywood that's going to go in the ceiling. And then I'm going to splice a couple of these along the way and have that come down. I'll probably have to make an additional hole in the ceiling tile to have that come down behind the TV. And then at that point, then I can splice just some of the regular speaker wire that I have. It doesn't have to be CL2 rated. But what's nice about the drop ceiling is that I can just, you know, take the tiles off kind of one at a time as I'm going back towards the TV, so I can splice, 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 and then drop it down. So make do with what you got, you know? This is really nice. I don't want it to go to waste. So I'm just gonna splice them. So I had a total of 6 height channels, 6 Theatrus TC65s from Aperion Audio. They were already up in my old theater, but I needed a total of 8. So Aperion Audio was kind enough to send out 2 more, and they just arrived yesterday. So today, now I can finally put them up as the rear heights. Because yeah, I've got the center height, front heights, middle heights, and Voice of God. Oh my goodness. So all I need to do is put the last 2 up. Exciting times.